Don't change so people will like you. Be yourself, and the right people will love the real you. Hi, I'm Jessica Disbrow, licensed social worker and registered psychotherapist in the state of Colorado. I'm also the founder and primary therapist of Higher Consciousness Healing. We offer innovative mental health services here in Lakewood, Colorado, offering community building, free online education, individual and group therapy services. We also specialize in serving youth and millennials. If you want more information about our practice, go to our website. It's www.higherconsciousnesshealing.org. Right now you're watching our live video blog. We air it every Saturday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. So welcome and thanks for joining us. Here we love to talk about different mental health topics from a spiritual and scientific perspective. And right now we've been focusing on conscious relationships and all of the ins and outs to make those things work for ourselves and then with others. So today we're going to be talking about 7 different things to help us be our authentic selves in relationships. And it can be any kind of relationship. I am going to talk specifically about intimate relationships here and there, but just apply it to whatever relationships seem like a good match in your life. So, last week we did talk about awakening to higher consciousness, and I did want to make one special note about that. So, conscious relationships take a conscious person, and last week we defined what a conscious person is and what that state of higher consciousness looks like. And something that I really want to drive home is that we all awaken to these different levels of consciousness kind of on our own time and in our own way. And so we might feel like we want to help other people awaken, or we want to awaken faster to these different areas of our brain or different energetic levels. And we just, have to go along for the journey. It's all about meeting ourselves where we're at with love and kindness and trying to be our full authentic selves in every moment. So, what about relationships? Well, first I want to take an answer from the audience, if we could. What makes it hard for you or the people you know, or maybe hypothetically speaking, what makes it hard to be our authentic selves in relationships? I'm going to ponder that for a minute. Hopefully someone in the audience will give us an answer. I did want to talk about something from the psychological standpoint while we're waiting. So we do have a few viewers. Those really early years in our development, when we're ages 2 and 3, are really important for us learning how to be ourselves later on in life. Because basically we're at that stage where we're no longer thinking that we're part of our parent. We're no longer enmeshed with our parent. And we're realizing that we're an I. It's like, oh, this is mine. I want to do this. No. All of that. And depending on the parent, that could go one way or the other. It could be a very fearful and controlling parent who doesn't allow that child to express and doesn't allow that child to have the voice that it needs. And that's hard because there's so many reasons to be fearful as parents, And that child doesn't get the chance to really develop its intuitive self and be able to make those decisions about its life. So when things get messed up that early on in life, it becomes really hard for us to feel like we can be our authentic selves and without fear of judgment or that someone's going to reject us. Those early patterns are really important. And then, there's other things that go on in our life too that kind of shape that as well. All right, we have a couple responses from the audience. Someone writes, I tend to feel like I'm supposed to or should behave and interact in a certain way. Am I too much to handle in relationships? All right, so as far as things that we're supposed to do, something I was hoping would get brought up is expectations. Expectations that we have around relationships are really important to evaluate. Are those expectations coming from some sort of societal norm or some sort of like religion, maybe our families or our peers, or those earlier experiences of feeling like we should be a certain way with our family? So it's really important to kind of break down what that is. And I don't think anyone's ever too much to handle in a relationship to a certain extent. Like, we want to be with the people who can hold space for us. And if someone's not holding a good space for you, especially in an intimate relationship, it might be time to sort of think about what that relationship is, if it's serving you or not. All right, awesome. Another viewer says, sometimes when we're tired and stressed, it's hard to be conscious in relationships. That's absolutely true. And part of the reason that is that it goes back to the brain. When we're tired and worn down, we're not getting the right food that we need, or exercise, sleep, so important. It's harder to tap into those higher functioning parts of our brain that are all about empathy and unity and wanting to work things out, and we kind of get into that survival, like mine, me area. So really, really helpful to be aware of that, because it's a very real thing. All right, great. Moving on. One other thing that I did want to talk about as far as what makes it hard for us to be ourselves in relationships, I think it's really important to always address the fears. And it's something people don't want to look at, and I'm not surprised that our viewers didn't go there. But fear of abandonment, engulfment, fear of rejection, fear that we're not actually lovable and that we're really flawed in some way. Fears of judgment, fears that we're going to be misunderstood. Like, the list goes on and on and on when we talk about fears that we have in relationships. And ideally, as we care for ourselves and do this work, we're meeting up with good people who we can make that jump in trust and really have that nice, conscious relationship. And ideally, you'll have conscious relationships with other conscious people, more so than you'll have conscious relationships with unconscious people. The latter is fine, and I think it's actually really helpful for both parties. As a teacher, having a student, that sounds kind of like there's different levels. I'm just going to swipe that and slide TV. I'm just going to move on. We're all learning different things at different times, and it's kind of hard to judge our level of consciousness versus someone else's. And when we kind of go down that road, it becomes very tricky. So, just approach everybody with love and make the decisions that are right for you and your relationships. So, the 7 things. Number 1, and I think this is hard for people. I think it's actually kind of hard. Being honest with ourselves and our needs, for us, and then in the relationship. Because if we can't be honest with ourselves and really like, what do I really need in this moment? Or what do I really need out of this relationship? Or etc., the situation, we can better navigate things. Number 2. As we're being honest with ourselves and our needs and taking care of ourselves, we'll find that we might need to ask for help. And that's okay. Because part of taking care of ourselves and our needs is, it's not like I need to be totally autonomous and never ask anyone for anything. That's not real. Like, we all depend on each other. It's okay. The important thing is to consciously ask for the help that you need. And also be willing to openly receive whatever's offered. Now, if you're really upset and you go to somebody, an intimate relationship or a friend, and you really need their help and you're freaking out, and the person says, hey man, I had a really bad day at work, I really can't be there for you, maybe you should call someone else. And you hang up and you're like, now you feel super rejected, and now you're dealing with this whole other level of intense negative emotion that didn't really need to be there. So it's important to recognize like what people have to offer, and we can only do our best with each other. So reaching out to the people who can support you and really asking for help in a conscious way is super important, because we really shouldn't be expecting our partners and other people in our life to be taking care of us, especially when we don't ask for it, because that just leads down to different enabling patterns, and it's complicated down that road. Number 3, making sure you devote time to your own interests and hobbies, and alone time is super, super important. Now, the reason I bring this up is in relationships, especially intimate relationships, or if we're cohabitating with like close friends or something, this might happen. We have a tendency to get enmeshed with the other person. Now, I mentioned enmeshment before when we were talking about parent and child relationships, and what happens in that early stage, you know, as a fetus, we are literally part of the mother, and then we're not part of the mother, and it takes us a while to figure this out. So the enmeshment is the I still think I'm the mother, I'm you, you are me, and psychologically sometimes that plays out in our later relationships. So there's that aspect to it, and then also that we just tend to be kind of tribal beings, and we want to align and do the other things that the other person's doing and like the things that they're liking, and we want to mirror that, and it's also so we can protect ourselves from rejection. So being really aware of that and continuing having your own hobbies and interests and alone time is really important, especially with intimate and like those close relationships. Number 4, nurture the close relationships that you have. They help you grow as a whole person and help you stay balanced. And the reason why I bring this up, it really does go back to those intimate and close relationships, is that when we have a new person in our life, a new romantic partner, we tend to get really excited about them, and we spend all of this time and energy in building that foundation of love, which is good. However, we then spend less and less time with the other people and the other parts of our life. And so that can kind of have a rabbit hole effect where then you're like, wow, I haven't seen my family in like a year. Like maybe I should go take a trip and see them. So making sure you're really nurturing all of your relationships and not putting all of your time and energy into one. Another thing that helps in the long run is when those romantic relationships don't work out and we've isolated ourselves from the people that love and care about us, we feel even more isolated. Or if the relationship is going badly and, you know, we're kind of fearful that maybe our family doesn't really like this partner or whatever, we like isolate more, and again, it just rabbit hole of dysfunction. So nurture those close relationships and your tribe members. Number 5, be present with yourself when you're with others. So start to pay attention to how present you are or not present you are when you're with others. Are you stuck in your head? Are you thinking about what you need to say next? Are you thinking about what you need to do later or eat? You know, really being present with each other is really important to help develop that authentic relationship with one another. So, you know, some of us feel like we have all of these things that we're trying to avoid in the present moment. So I definitely recommend to watch some of the earlier videos that I did on being present and doing mindfulness techniques. Deep breathing is really great to help us build awareness when we're engaging with others. And another tip that I just learned recently I want to throw out there is wiggling your toes. Wiggling your toes. Other people don't realize you're doing it. You can wiggle your toes, help build some awareness in your body, and, you know, engage with that active listening with the other person. Number 6, boundaries are really key in relationships. And it goes back to what I talked about with making sure you devote time and energy to those hobbies and interests. When we get enmeshed with people, that's when our boundaries are really breaking down. So ideally going into any kind of relationship, having your own boundaries and really knowing what that is for you is important. Like, are you the kind of person who needs to take a lot of downtime and space? Maybe you can't go to a full day event with someone. Speak up, it's okay. Manage those boundaries for yourself. Really important. And again, just to say, that tribal nature, we really can't overlook that. Like, we really want to belong, and we really want to fit in, and we really want to do what other people are doing. And ultimately, we have to decide what's good for us, and put up those boundaries in a loving and healthy way. Number 7, really, really, really important. Try to be around people who actually like you. I know it sounds kind of obvious, but people who actually like and appreciate you for who you are, for your personality, for your quirks, for your flaws. We all have things that we're working on, and it's important to be surrounding ourselves with people who can make that unconditional and supportive space for us. Because if someone doesn't like you for being the real you, maybe that relationship isn't serving you. And if it's somebody who's in your space, maybe it's somebody at work who's having a really hard time seeing and respecting you, and there's a lot of clash there. Do what you need to do to protect yourself, and try not to engage with people who are being reactionary and intense. So, love yourselves, love each other. It's like my main message always. And, we have all these answers inside of us. We know that's healthy things are healthy and dysfunctional things are dysfunctional, but sometimes it helps to have somebody point it all out. So I hope this has been helpful. Next week, we're going to be talking about direct, honest, and nonviolent communication. So communication is so key in relationships, and so many people think that they're good communicators, as I'm slipping up, good communicators, and really when we're stressed, it becomes a lot harder for us to communicate. So let's really look at what some tactics are, so we can use those in the heat of the moment. I'd love to take any questions or comments before we wrap up the show. I also want to mention that if you have any suggestions for a topic that you'd like to see covered on the video blog, please definitely feel free to shout out some suggestions, either write a comment or you can send me a message and let me know what your suggestions are. I'd love to hear from all of you. Quick announcement. If you are a millennial, somewhere in the age range of 18 to 30, we do have some community building and supportive groups that we're hosting. So if you're interested in any of those, definitely check us out on the web. I'll leave the link in the description box above to our website and the millennial page. Awesome. All right, I don't see any more comments, but thank you all so much for watching and devoting this time for yourself and your relationships. It's really awesome. All right, I'd love to see you next week, and take care.